The following program and contents, including the views and opinions expressed by the host and any guest speakers, are solely for informational and entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed are not endorsed or supported by rel-mar Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The host and guest speakers are solely responsible for their own perspectives, and their views do not reflect those of rel-mar Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The information provided in this program should not be considered as professional advice or as a substitute for professional consultation. Listeners and viewers are encouraged to form their own opinions and seek independent advice when necessary. rel-mar Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, and advertisers hereby disclaim any liability for any claims, damages, or losses incurred as a result of the information presented in this program.
Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Thanks for joining us. Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the X Zone TV channel, divisions of rel-mar Media Company, with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. This hour, we'll meet the demons called anxiety and depression. Today's society is increasingly plagued with anxiety and depression. Even with modern medicine and counseling techniques, these debilitating conditions continue to rise. Is there a way we can help ourselves out of this downward spiral? With us this hour, to explore conquering anxiety and depression is Faust Ruggiero. Faust is a published research author, clinical trainer, and a therapist who's developed the Process Way of Life counseling program and presented it in the Fix Yourself Handbook. His website, FAUSTRUGGIERO.com. Faust, thanks so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Hi, Will, and it's so nice to be back with you again.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you on. So let's start with, how did you first become interested in depression and anxiety?
Well, I've been counseling for 43 years, Willie, and it presents itself in so much of what I do, and I've known that forever. It's the kind of thing that I've treated in a variety of different ways over the years. So it just made sense to finally get down to the point that we put it into a text and start dealing with it. And the program I use is very simple, very practical, and it gets great results.
That's great to know. So there is something out there, because it's become a huge problem, and I think it continues to increase. So that we can be clear, how many ways does anxiety and depression, even though they seem quite different, how do they relate?
Both of those are physical conditions, and that's really where we need to start. There's this myth that's always been out there that this is a mental health disease or a mental health condition, and it finally works its way into the brain, and it will do that, and we'll feel all the pressures there. But primarily, both of them are physical conditions. Call them chemical imbalances, call them what you will. They affect the body, they affect the nervous system, and then work their way through the emotions and into the brain.
Well, I'd have to ask you, Faust, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Doesn't our state of being, our mind, our thought forms, doesn't that affect our brain chemistry?
Well, there's that reciprocal nature. I talk a lot about that, called the brain-body relationship. It is always there. However, when we start to deal with anxiety, you have to ask yourself the question, how come person A can go through all the stress and not come up with lots of anxiety or depression, and then person B is just off the charts? And it's just the way the nervous system is set up. It hits the body first. And most people, when you ask them about depression or anxiety, they'll tell you about how physically they cannot get going. That's always the issue. Anxiety, they'll tell you how revved up their body is. I want to jump out of my skin kind of a thing. Just make this stop. Depression, I can't get going. I'm stuck in here and I can't move past it. If we treat the physical first, and when I say treat, I'm not talking about only with drugs and then move past it. It's about getting your body healthy. It's about understanding how to live physically the right way.
So it sounds like two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there a way we can catch ourselves before it manifests in the brain? I mean, our life circumstances can certainly contribute to either one, anxiety or depression. Say, for instance, PTSD. Soldiers, they were in a war, okay, and for a long period of time, ergo, their body adjusted to that state. So, how does treating it in the body first help?
Well, anything you do, look at it this way. If I break my leg and I'm trying to recover and it's really hurting, it was a bad break, and now I'm trying to think through some things, I'm going to have a real hard time because all my body energy, even my mental energy, is being directed toward that injury. When we go through depression and anxiety, we're talking about physical trauma. We're talking about emotional, mental trauma. So all the body's resources are going to go where they're needed first. They're going to the body. That's why we try to treat the body first. Let's kind of get that out of the way, if you will. And then let's talk about those emotions and that racing mind and all those things that are happening. But, it's hard to calm your mind down when your body is just so tight or so revved up, or you just can't move past things physically. Let's get that done first.
So, there's in anxiety. Okay, let's start there. Sometimes I've seen where people can deal with the world and they deal with it fast, and they're really proactive kind of people. No anxiety, calm as they can be until one day it's like the cup is runneth over. Okay, so what's going on there? Is that a thing, or?
It's an interesting concept. I talk a lot about a phenomenon the brain works with. It's called habit formation. Some people call it normalization, call it what you will. But the brain gets used to doing things in a certain way at a certain level, all those kind of things. The brain structures itself. So now we're people who are going real fast, taking a lot of pressure on. The brain's going to adjust, and we're not going to feel it until there's a triggering device, that last little straw that we don't look at as something that's so significant that it caused the anxiety. All it did was the final trigger. And once that happens, then it kind of, it breaks open the dam, and then here we go.
So the body is slowly but surely building up the thing that ends up in a panic attack. So it's slowly but surely coming to that point, and then there's just the final proverbial straw.
Yes, like anything else, the longer the wear and tear, eventually there's got to be some maintenance. But the problem is we don't provide the maintenance. We do some self-care routines. We escape a little bit here. We find entertainment devices and all those, which are great. They release some of it, and that actually works to our favor in that, okay, we get some relief. But the other thing it does, unfortunately, is it convinces us that we can keep on going the way we were because now these outlets are working, and we keep on doing the same things. Eventually, we get to the point that that attention is now required.
So how are we predisposed to either go the anxiety route or the depression route? I mean, they sound like, again, opposite sides of the same coin rather than the same thing. So how do you know what dictates what direction we're going to go with it?
The first thing, we're back to physical. We're talking about family history. There's a lot of research that'll tell us that genetically we tend to follow suit with the previous generations. When I do family histories, and I'll do that when someone comes into the office, and when we're talking talking about anxiety or depression, I'll always say, let's go back. Any suicides, drug addiction, mental health issues, people on lots of meds, people who have had difficulties with relationships and maintaining jobs, all those kinds of things. And I find the correlations. I find that people in the generation before, and maybe two or three before that, they had the same kinds of problems. So genetically, that's going to be part of it. There's no doubt about that. It's not
So,
always the case, but typically it is.
so genetically is a physical predisposition. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. Very often, if you think about it, genetically, we will look like our parents. We will oftentimes react like them. We like the same foods often. We go through a lot of the same kinds of things. So yeah, it's not far-fetched to think that in terms of mental health and the way the brain works, we're going to receive some of the same kinds of ways of doing things that our parents did.
I know a lot of studies have been done on identical twins, particularly ones that end up in mental institutions and have the same disorder. And it's pretty consistent. That would kind of leave a person to believe that we're stuck with this, that we came with it, we were born with it, we're victims of it. What do you have to say to that?
Now we're into what the brain's capable of doing. I've been talking about the body and the body's effect on the brain, but we have to keep in mind that there's a reciprocal nature between the body and the brain. While the body is doing all the things it needs to do, the brain is controlling so many of them. So if we're really stressed and that signal comes through us, it's going to go through the nervous system. It's going to penetrate every area of our body. We're going to become stressed. So the key is, when I work with people, let's purge all the bad stuff, things you're doing that are keeping those conditions alive and kicking, if you will. And then let's retrain your brain. Now we're going to start doing some things that give your brain an option. Give it some skills that are necessary to get in the way of these conditions. And it works very well.
Well, we're about out of time in this segment, but are you telling me that it's kind of a mind over matter? We have this genetic predisposition, but we can choose not to express it?
Almost. What I'm saying is it's a tag team duo, if you will, the brain and the body, getting the body healthy, getting the brain healthy together, and teaching them how to live life in a fashion that produces optimal health.
That would be wonderful, because how much of it, we're just about out of time here, how much of an increase have we seen just in the last 2 years?
Oh my God. The pandemic accelerated everything. It was all there, then locking people up and giving them just tremendous food to feed these demons, if you will.
Exactly.
That accelerated the process. Plus now the world has changed and it's not as accommodating as it used to be.
Well, we're going to have to get into those changes on the other side of a station break. Faust and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Are you ready for a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat? Get ready to dive into the gripping memoir by Bart Sibrel titled Moon Man. Bart Sibrel takes you on a heart-pounding journey, unmasking the truth behind America's famous Apollo missions. Prepare yourself for hair-raising encounters with agents from the U.S. government's top secret agencies. In Moon Man, Sibrel fearlessly reveals his real-life espionage adventures, shining a light on one of the CIA's best-kept secrets. Brace yourself for shocking revelations, including Sibrel's discovery of privately recorded audio exposing an Apollo astronaut's chilling plot, a plot orchestrated by the CIA. That's right. As Sibrel unveils this groundbreaking evidence, it becomes clear that there is much more to the Apollo missions than meets the eye. Could it be that we've been deceived all along? Moon Man is a gripping page-turner that challenges everything you thought you knew. It's a mind-bending journey into the unknown, where the line between truth and fiction becomes blurred. Don't miss this opportunity to uncover the secrets hidden for decades. Let your curiosity guide you as you join Bart Sibrel on his quest to find the truth. Moon Man, available now at Sibrel.com. That's Sibrel.com. Prepare to have your beliefs shaken to the very core.
Anxious? Depressed? What are the demons that haunt you? With us this hour discussing the devastating impact of depression and anxiety is Faust Ruggiero. Faust, we were getting into what causes anxiety and depression. I'd like to compare it some. So sometimes, we feel down and we know exactly why. Our dog died, we had a breakup, and other times depression just kind of comes on and we're down and we can't pin it. We can't pin anything to it. Are those two different animals? And how can we know when we've gone from a justifiable sadness that comes and goes into depression?
They are different animals in most situations. The dog dies. Okay, I'm down, and I love this dog, and now I get up every day, and the routine is different. I see his dish, or I see where we used to eat. All those things, yeah, and that's going to create should create a temporary condition where I'm down about it, but then I come through it as my brain begins to readjust. Other times when we're talking about anxiety or depression, it can just turn on a dime. It hits. There's a triggering event or not. When we have people with anxiety attacks, they'll tell me, gee, I was sleeping, everything was well, and I woke up with my heart pounding and I didn't know what to do. And sometimes there's a little bit of a crossover where the person has anxiety or depression, then that dog is a triggering event where typically they would get over it, but it triggers a long-term kind of an effect. The answer is they're different situations. However, nothing about these two conditions is exclusive. They occur together at times. One provokes the other. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's longer. And what that brings us to, is the major point, is that your demon is yours. There's no way to say that, well, when this happens, this is going to happen because statistics tell us this, or the research says this. That's why I call it the anxiety demon. And I tell them in my writings, in my teachings, I say, get to know your personal demon. That's the most important thing. It's the step that's often missed. Oftentimes, counselors and other practitioners are going by what typically applies. It's kind of a cookie cutter thing. Well, this is what to expect. We'll medicate this. We'll counsel through these things, give you some skills, and you're on your way. But it's not the same as the person A comes in. Person B is going to be completely different depending on genetics and what they're doing in their lives, life circumstances, the way their brain works. So when they come in, I'm going through every bit of that. I'm defining that personal demon, just like I would define the person in front of me who is different from anyone else.
Let's talk about triggers a little bit. I don't know that all of our audience understands what those would be. So if we have an incident where our dog dies, poor dog, we're going to pick on the dog today. Our dog dies and we get very, very sad and we get depressed for a while, but then we come out of it in a reasonable amount of time after mourning our pet, versus our dog dies and it triggers us into something where we stay depressed. Are we being triggered into something that happened that we haven't processed in our history?
It could happen with some people. Most often, however, we have the anxiety, we have the depression. It's already there. And look at the trigger as kind of a button, which we press it and it turns it all on. How long it stays on depends on the severity of the condition for us. It's a neurotransmitter thing with anxiety and depression. Our brain doesn't receive what it should receive in the way it should. So, that's all part of it. But that little trigger is a button. It could be the dog dying. It could be something simple as I had a fight with my spouse. And all of a sudden, inside I went into a rage. And now I can't stop it. And I'm saying to myself, the fight wasn't that bad. We do that. We've had that before. We always come out of it okay. Oftentimes, it's just blowing off steam. Why am I like this? Because the trigger kind of opened up the floodgates again. There we go. And I'm stuck in this and I don't know why.
By floodgates, you mean the backlog of whatever we haven't
It could be the
processed
back
yet.
or just the onset of the anxiety or depression. It just accelerates it and brings it to a higher level, if you will.
The one that we're predisposed to genetically?
Can be. Sometimes it's more environmental than genetic for some people. Some people, it's not so much genetics, but they're always stuck in this. I'm dealing with people who have addicted children, who have children, and they're raising the children, and there's court battles, and there's all these kinds of things going on. And typically they would be people who have mild anxiety, not much depression, but now it's every day. It's coming at them all the time. It's just wearing them down. So on my end, it's my task to determine how much of what is affecting that. That's what I'm looking for in those situations.
So, for those of us that are getting down, or feel anxious, how can we tell when we're, instead of the ups and downs that we normally deal with a day and situational, how can we tell when we're sliding into a dysfunctional anxiety or depression?
You look for the signs. I teach people about what I call baseline behaviors. It's not a new phrase. I shouldn't say I call. That's been in the terminology forever. And really, baseline behavior is how I am typically every day without depression. Just me. This is how I behave. Now, if I'm getting off track, I'm procrastinating. I'm overreacting. I'm ruminating, and I can't get out of my head, so to speak. I just don't feel like doing anything. Those types of things. If that's happening and it happens for several days, something's wrong. All those things can happen, but they should turn off in a short period of time. But if they keep on going, that's a telltale sign that something's off. And if I'm the type of person who experiences that type of 2-3 day lag often, then it tells me that some things aren't too well, and I probably need to get some help.
So here's another one. How does anxiety differ from panic attacks?
Well, anxiety is just a mild term. If I have anxiety, maybe I can feel the acceleration in my body. Maybe I'm worrying. I can't turn my head off. I'm thinking about what if. My emotions are overreacting in situations. That's typical for anxiety. The panic attack it represents a kind of a loss of functioning, if you will. Get me out of here. My heart's going. I'm sweating. I am going to jump right out of my skin. I'm going to fall down on the floor and go into a fetal position and cry. Get me to the hospital. It's all that kind of stuff we see. And anxiety attacks do have, ranges, if you will. They can be the types of things where I can say, if I just go outside, catch my breath, maybe I'm going to take my Ativan or Xanax, and 20 minutes I come down, I know all that, versus I can't stop this. I've taken the pill. I've gone outside. People have tried to talk me through this, and I end up in the emergency room.
And there's no talking through it.
Right.
Right. So we touched in on it a little bit about how anxiety and depression are really on the increase. Let's go into that a little further. How much of an increase are we seeing, and what do you attribute it to?
Well, it depends on the stats that you look at. I like to think of it about a 30% increase. Some of the people that are a little bit more concerned about it will say 50% and more. 30% what I think would be about, but that's a lot. I mean, that's huge. It's not just the increase. I always like to say that when we see stats, we have to go in and find out what's causing that. It's the severity. It's the feeling of, this isn't going to change. We lived in a culture before the pandemic where, for the most part, we thought, well, it's a relatively stable. I'm going to come through this. The world is a little different. It's slower. It's more accommodating. It's not anymore. It went from black and white, if you will, to really, really critical and almost abusive in many ways. And people can't find a way to turn it off.
Do you think do you think being bombarded with so much information and so much media is playing into this?
Absolutely. The brain can only process so much so that it can make healthy decisions. And we're just getting a lot of information coming from different places with a lot of pressure pushing it. We have a news media which, regardless of what they tell you in terms of their changing their format, they are very pressure oriented. Let me shock you into this. Let me draw you in more than ever. People are paying attention to that. I keep telling people, turn off your television sets and get off the social media stuff. But it's intense, it's fast, it's pressured, and there's no point where it stops. So you don't get a chance to catch your breath.
Or process the intel coming
Or
in.
process the information and then assume that, well, if I do this, this can probably, if not fix it, certainly get me to the point where it can tone it down a bit. We're not seeing that.
So, how much do you feel we've become a very sedient society? We exercise our thumbs a lot, okay, but we've become very sedient. Where we, before worked in the field, worked on the farm, worked in the factory, whatever. We were up, we were moving around and physically engaged. Do you think this is exacerbating the physical part of depression and anxiety?
Well, there's no doubt about that. One of the things I tell people all the time is get into action. I don't care what you do. If you want to go out for a walk, if you want to go out and do something with friends, you have a workshop, you want to go do something, get into action. Get your body active. Bodies were meant to be in motion. That doesn't mean you have to, join the club and have a rigorous workout schedule. It simply means that you want to be active every day. Some of the research we're finding is that people who go out for a 20-minute or a half-hour walk, just do that at a relative, not a brisk pace, even just a relatively constant pace, they're much better off in terms of anxiety and depression. So that's part of that physical thing. I say we got to get our bodies healthy. It's about what goes in. Let's not put the wrong things in our bodies. Let's get them active. Yeah, by all means, that helps.
We're just about out of time in this segment. But how about breathing? I mean, it seems like we've ended up shallow breathing or watching TV. There's something scary going on, and we're not really ever taking a full breath. Is that impacting our mental well-being?
You hit it on the head. It's the first thing I do when I work with people. I say, let's change your breathing around a little bit. Two things. Well, I'll say, let's get some breathing exercises. They're online. You can find them anywhere. It takes about 8 seconds per breath, slow in, slow out. And then I tell them, try to be conscious during the day to go slow. Just breathe slow. What that does is two things. It helps the body calm down a bit, but it also keeps the mind in the moment because you have to focus on what you're doing in the moment, which always helps anxiety and depression.
There's all sorts of demons in the past and in the future, isn't there?
There are.
Well, it's time for another commercial break. But Faust and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. How do we exorcise the demon? With this hour discussing the myths of depression is Faust Ruggiero. His website, faustruggiero.com. Faust, you speak of ADD, good, anxiety and depression as internal bullies. Would you explain that?
You know, uh, well, then we're back to that way the brain trains itself. Uh, brain, the whole human experience, the brain is a dynamic organ that consistently changes. And when we are under the pressure from a bully, whether that's external or internal, the brain adjusts to that and it tries to survive it. And what happens when anxiety and depression become the way we live, we begin to bully ourselves almost. The internal language changes. I'm not good enough. I'll never get out of this. I hate my life. All those kinds of things. Our internal view of the external world gets more angry, and we don't like this person, and that person is what caused my problem, and we keep on going, and so now the whole world all is inside is all full of negative energy, and we keep beating ourselves up with that every day. We don't get up and say, new day, I really want to get some things done today. I feel good. We get up and we say, oh, here I go again. What's going to happen to me today? And the interesting thing happens is that we start to behave that way. Not only we think that way, a bully changes, a victim of a bully changes the way that person behaves every day. We're afraid of things. We avoid things. We react harshly and quickly to get that out of our way. So before we know it, with these two conditions, it mirrors exactly what we see in schools and workplaces and dating and all those things where someone's being bullied.
So, are we talking about like those internal tapes that we all have that kind of run in the background?
Yeah, it changes. The longer we're in a negative or a conflicting situation, things change. If you're put in a work situation, say, well, new company, a new boss, and now they come in and they're at me all the time, and you don't do well, and you don't do well. Well, you get up in the morning, you say, I don't even want to go to work, and before you know it, you're not doing well. Because you just can't think through it, and it gets to the point where you don't need the external bully to help to go at you. You're bullying yourself. You're doing it, and what we see, interestingly, is that when people are bullied, even when we get them out of the situation that causes all this pain, they continue to bully themselves for a while. They continue to think that way. We see that a lot with women who are in abusive situations. We take them out and they're almost ready to go back in because they don't know what else to do. They don't know how to live another way. So, that's why, my program is the way it is, why I wrote the books the way I wrote them. I want people to attack something other than themselves. There's a bully there. Let's go get that bully.
So, also, I'm wondering, just from what you're saying, we were talking earlier about how you make it about somebody outside of yourself, then you become a victim, right? And we sometimes become invested in that so we don't have to feel guilty or own the responsibility. Is that what motivates this whole thing?
Well, it's part of it. What happens is as long as the brain is experiencing situations where it's painful and someone or something is coming at it, uh, it has to account. It has to survive. So it goes into survival mode. It's not unlike the little boy being bullied by the bigger boy who tries to do everything the big boy wants because he just wants to survive. He doesn't care what happens. Physically, he wants to survive. Then it goes into emotions. Then it goes into the brain. And before you know it, the whole human organism is now thinking of how to survive this. And then when there is no way out, it's bullying from the inside. Now I'm in this. This is my life. This is never going to change. This is who I am. And the bully can leave, can go to a different school. Someone you can change jobs, whatever relationships, but you're still behaving in the same way. And that's what I often get with people that come back and say, the condition is over. I mean, I'm out of that. I still get up every day and I'm looking around corners and I'm making sure I do things just right and I'm saying just the right thing, it changes the way the brain works. So I don't want people, I'm trying to break that cycle. I want them to start saying, well, look at this and say, it's that condition. I need to focus on whatever I need to do on that condition. That's what's causing my problem, not me.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, what we're looking at is the faces change, the scenario repeats, and we're the common denominator. So we're continually recreating the familiar in our lives, even though it's
We
not
all,
desirable.
yeah, the brain doesn't always know how to stop. There is evidence, medical evidence, scientific evidence, if you want to, that the structures of the brain actually change uh, w- uh, as a result of positive or negative energy. So if we are being beaten up a lot, those structures change, and that's the reason why we have a hard time letting it go. Positive thinkers then will go into terrible situations and say, I got this. What's the worst that can happen? I'm going to do this and I'll get out of it and I'll do okay because the structures in their brain, it's uh, energy moving across nerve endings, if you will. It's positive, but in the negative, uh, with negative thinkers, we see a whole different way that they behave. And it takes a long time to restructure the brain, if you will. That's what
So
we're doing.
is this because of what we've heard so much about neuroplasticity?
Yes, it's exactly what it is.
So it happens without us paying close attention. But if we do pay close attention, we can undo it. We can change
Yeah,
it.
yeah. In fact, the proof of that is that if we get this early and before that neuroplasticity starts, we can actually affect change much more efficiently and much quicker. But the longer it goes on, the more difficult it gets because more of the brain is involved.
So is this a classical conditioning kind of situation where you start to react in the way that you always have that gets undesirable results, but you stop and take a breath or something and think, is this the way I want to go? Or maybe I have other opportunities? Is that how you rewire the brain?
That's part of it. The first order of business is to help the person understand where it came from. Because in anything we do, when we're going to teach, and when we talk about counseling, we are unlearning, so to speak, before you learn. Unlearning is not an accurate term, but it presents the concept. We need to purge your life from all that negativity. We need to get all those things that are causing you pain, that are causing you to think in such negative terms. Let's try to get those out of the mix and introduce some things to replace that.
Okay, so how do we work this?
Well, that's where that now we're talking about that personal demon thing. I'm going to go find all those things that are part of the problem. I'm going to talk about. We're going to look at genetics if we can. Sometimes we can't because we have an adopted person. We have a person whose family hasn't followed along and doesn't understand genetics. So, but we're going to get as much of family history as we can. We're going to look at what they're doing to their bodies. Simple things. You have anxiety and you had how many cups of coffee this morning? Not a good idea. We're going to purge those kind of things. Let's get you to a point where you're not doing anything to hurt yourself. Now we're going to start talking about putting that breathing exercise and maybe the physical exercise in the picture. We're going to start talking about changing that language and giving yourself some time to think before you react. We're going to start doing all those kinds of things, but we can't do it till we get that body into a place where it's not reacting on its own. The body just sometimes I don't want to say it goes into spasm, but it's like that. It's just, oh, wow, how did that happen? Why is this happening all the time? Well, again, you're anxious to begin with. Your diet is full of carbs, lots of sugar. You like those energy drinks. You like that caffeine. We're going to systematically get that kind of either way down or out of the picture if we can. And we're going to start rebuilding you. That's what we're doing.
So it sounds to me like this is a very personal journey and very much of an inside job. So how much does the person personally have to take care of this themselves? I mean, it doesn't seem like somebody else can do it for us.
As long as the person buys into what we're doing, they can do this. It's not, something where you come in the office and in 6 months, we're going to get you through this. We're going to take our time. The way to love and respect someone, so to speak, is to, be personal with them. Talk about their own personal way of doing things. Some people can clean this up in that 4 to 6 months. Some people are going to be with me a couple years, and that's okay. It's about getting them to a point where they're more comfortable, where they can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And a big key in this is that they're no longer alone in it, because when you get into depression and anxiety, one of the things I talk about a lot is not so much being lonely, but aloneness. I'm in this. No one understands it. No one knows what I'm going through. And I'm not very good at telling them either. So I'm not letting them in. They're not coming in. I'm all alone. That's why depression and anxiety and subsequently suicide rates go up, because people feel there's no way out. I want them to understand there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm there with you through every step. We're going to do this. Little by little, you're going to say, gee, that was okay. I got that piece. And every little step not only fixes some problems, it gives you the confidence that I think I can do this. I did that. Let's go to the next one.
We're, again, out of time in this segment, but what are some real red flags that you better get on it quick?
Loss of jobs, relationship issues, physical things that are happening that you can't control, sleep issues, dietary things. I'm not eating well. I can't turn my mind off. I'm really getting down on myself. Those type. Yeah. When it starts to get to that point, you're in trouble.
How about cravings and addictions? Do those play in there?
Always. Because it's medicine. That's the bottom line.
Drugs,
for some people, it's food. For some people, it's pornography. Others, it's the medications. Others, it's alcohol or pot, and whatever it may be. And what they're all very temporary fixes. Quick fixes to a problem that needs to go to the cause.
So just kind of trying to mask the symptoms by eating too much sugar or drinking too much alcohol, or how about workaholism? Does that play in there?
Sure, it can.
Yeah.
Some people will do that to get away from their problems. But again, all these quick fixes eventually erode, and you're stuck. You're coming back to the problem one way or another.
There you have it.
The
Well,
bottom line.
it is time for that station break. Faust and I will return to explore the internal bully a little further. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
Dr. Michelle Rathbone has been nominated for Healthcare Provider for the Year 2023 Award for Excellence in Brain Injury Rehabilitation that is presented by the Ontario Brain Injury Association in collaboration with the Personal Injury Alliance. Dr. Rathbone has a lifelong interest in treating neurotrauma. To that end, he did a medical degree at the University of Liverpool and a PhD at McMaster University, studying the biochemical basis of regeneration. He extended this work as a faculty member in the Department of Neurosciences at McMaster, where he was a principal investigator in the Medical Research Council of Canada Group in Developmental Neurobiology. He then completed his clinical neurology training at Western University and was awarded a Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians of Canada, specializing in neurology. Dr. Rathbone has treated over 40,000 patients, over 7,000 of whom had neurological trauma. He has been instrumental in treating patients with acquired brain injury in Hamilton. He has consulted on the Acquired Brain Injury Inpatient Service at the Regional Rehabilitation Center for 12 years and trained the neurologist hospitalist currently working on the inpatient service. He played a central role in developing the Integrated Interdisciplinary Adult Concussion Clinic at Hamilton Health Sciences with colleagues from other disciplines. Dr. Rathbone works with each of his patients individually, tailoring treatment to the patient's needs and wishes.
Treatments then involve both pharmacological and non-pharmacological approaches. In addition to his clinical neurology practice, Dr. Rathbone has continued his research and educational activities. He has published over 200 papers and abstracts and published 3 papers on concussions in major neurological journals in the last year. His research has been recognized internationally. For example, he was awarded the honor of Supremi Magistri, Università degli Studi G d'Annunzio, Chieti, Italy for outstanding contributions to research and high academic example. Dr. Rathbone is currently investigating novel treatments for symptoms of acquired brain injury. His objective is to help the recovery of patients with ABI. Dr. Rathbone has educated many students and residents who have become neurologists, several specializing in acquired brain injury. His teaching has been recognized internationally, and he is an invited teacher in neurology and acquired brain injury in training programs of Hippocrates, the prestigious international medical education organization in Munich, Innsbruck, twice, and Berlin. To vote for Dr. Michelle Rathbone, go to www.aoe.pialaw.ca/vote.
What would it be like to be anxiety-free? Is it even possible? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with the author of Fix Yourself Handbook, Faust Ruggiero. Faust, we were talking about the internal demons and bullies. Let's talk a little bit about myths. You say that there are certain myths about anxiety and depression that need to be addressed before treatment can even begin. What is that?
You know, well, the first one is just that it's a mental health concern only. We need to get away from that. It's a physical concern too. Let's start with that so we can treat the whole person. That's what we need to be doing with that. So many myths. It'll never stop. You're gonna have this all your life. That's not necessarily true. At least not at the same level that you have that. That people will never understand you. Yes, they can. They will understand. We have to teach you how to communicate these things to people, and that no treatment can be effective. Absolutely, treatment is effective. I have 40 years of people using this approach, and I've never had anyone who has not benefited from it as long as they stick with it. So if you're willing to do what you need to do, put the proper network in front of you and go with the plan, yeah, you can beat this.
I like what you said about network, because it seems like, just like our society, our treatments have become so fragmented. You go to a major care provider, your primary, if you're in the States here, and then they will send you to somebody to examine your lungs or someone to examine your heart, or they send you to specialists. They don't tend to do a whole bunch themselves here anymore. It's just more like a referral center. And in that shuffle, we kind of fall apart because one isn't necessarily talking to the other. And so when we're dealing with anxiety and depression, it's so it's so out in the ethers, really. It's not anything you can cut out, drug out particularly. How important do you think it is in addressing all 4 levels of being, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the energetic?
Absolutely. You know, it's good to have someone who is knowledgeable about what you just said. First of all, that the 4 even exist, because very few people will treat 4. They will treat the physical, they'll treat the intellectual, the mind, they'll treat the body. When you get to that 4th one, some people believe, some people don't. Some people are willing to include it as part of the picture, some aren't. What I always tell people to do is, you're going to get to someone who does similar things that I do for a living. Get someone who is your quarterback, if you will. This is the person who is going to be with you, understand everything you're doing, and then arrange for all those services and follow through with you. So, I have a network of people that I use on the professional level. I want them to have a network of friends and family, if you will, someone that's going to be their advocate out there. Because often, if you have anxiety and in particular depression, you don't do anything to help yourself. You're afraid. You've exhausted all the alternatives. Everyone sent you everywhere. So, you want to get a network of people you can trust. It's going to be your counselor. It should be your primary physician. It should be your support network first. Then we'll start branching out. Then we'll determine if you need a psychiatrist. Do you need an endocrinologist? Do you need all those kinds of people who we have to use to, at the very least, eliminate potential causal situations. Let's strip this down so we know exactly what you have, and then we're going to move forward with it.
So if we're looking at all these different modalities, it sounds like a person's just kind of dead in the water if they can't afford to go to all these different specialists and spend 2 years working on this. Is there any kind of a fast track?
Not in this. I mean, this is why they end up going to on medications, and then they'll do a little counseling here, and that's where they'll start to turn the corner. Unfortunately, when they begin to turn the corner, they also believe that they're better. So okay, I can do this now. It's there, but I'm functional. And a lot of times people aren't thinking about, I'm going to be just fine. They made a decision a long time ago that they weren't going to be really healthy. But if I could just get up every day and get through everything I have to get through, and you can get them to that point. But the problem is it doesn't always stay there.
So you have to work on the belief system?
You have to work on the belief system. You have to work on the causes. Let's find what caused this. If the dam has a leak in it, we got to plug the leak. We can't just keep putting water back into the, we have to get to the point where we find the cause. Once we find the cause, then it's so much easier for you to go back and do some things.
So as an individual dealing with either anxiety or depression, how do we exercise the demon? Where do we start? Say we don't have access to you.
Okay.
Where do we start?
I'm going to get your family. I'm going to get all the history I need. I'm going to spend a couple sessions with you, and I'm going to ask you lots of questions, and you're going to answer them to the best of your ability. Then we're going to start working with that body. We're going to start. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to deal with your emotions and with your brain that's, can't turn off. I'm going to do that. But our primary focus is going to be on getting you to calm down physically. Get your own demons out, the things you're doing. Let's get those all out of the picture. We're going to purge first. But again, so that the people feel comfortable that I'm not just pushing something aside that may need to be dealt with right away. I'm going to deal with all the components. I'm just going to put an emphasis on that physical first.
So if we're an individual that doesn't have access to you necessarily, are you saying that starting with looking at healing your body, at giving it what it needs to work on, to eliminating the things that are harmful, would that still be a good place to start to give you the energy to deal?
Yeah, it would. At the very least, get your body to the point where it's not reacting, it's not overreacting and putting you in potential crisis situations. That may be your doctor. That may be for a short period of time a medication. I always use that as the last resort. But for some people who can't access services, they may use that. When I started practicing over 40 years ago, maybe 10% of my people were on medicine. Now it's 75%, so to speak. And
everybody's looking for that quick fix.
Real fast. They come in, and now and I would say, again, 5% of my people, I will get to a doctor. Let's get this person on something for now. But the others now, that's the other change. They're coming in with it. By the time they get to me, I've been on that for 5 years. I had one person that came on, they hadn't had their medication changed for 24 years.
Oh my, yeah.
And we're going through all this anxiety, depression. I said, well, when was your depression your medicine changed? Oh, it's been working so great. Yes. And all these things have happened in the meantime. I know the medicine's not working. Let's get you back. And sure as shooting, it was not working. So, it's a get to the physical first. Normally you can get to a counselor. You may have to wait. That's the problem today. Sometimes the waits are a month, 2 months, 3 months. If you don't have insurance, it can be long. That's that's one of the problems. One of the things we've seen since the pandemic is many more people are trying to access services. They're seeing it now, and we don't have the practitioners, and the insurance companies are not funding the way we would hope. And so now we have a lot more people accessing services who can't get service. And the problem with that is now I'm really out of luck in my mind. I know it's there. It's tearing me apart. I finally made the move, and there's no one there to help me.
No one to help. Yeah, and our situation is not good in
No,
the States, or I know other countries are suffering from that as well,
same thing. Yeah.
particularly since the pandemic. So
Mhm.
it's the time in the show, Faust, and I get to ask you, what is your mission?
Always, my mission is to be there for people. That's my opinion of why I'm here. I've been doing this all my life. I still love it. I still keep doing it. I'm still counseling people. Um, you know, my mission is to bring the kind of treatment, the kind of things that are going to help people live happy, productive lives to as many people as I can.
That's a beautiful mission, particularly in our day and age. So, how do you see empowering the individual to address their own inner demons and their own anxiety and depression? Ultimately, how do you see that changing our culture, changing the world?
If we can get to the point that we're not looking for quick fixes, we're not looking for everything outside of us to fix us, that we understand that in us, so to speak, there is the power to do all these things, but we have to access that. We have to learn how to go in and not rely on the external. If we can do that, we become people that are more secure. Well, we make better choices. We get along with each other better. We're not so hard on each other. We look for positive growth. We look for positive solutions, and we're willing to work together. But we have to become stronger inside first.
Well, again, there's a lot of people out there that want to make a change and don't have access at this point, or are on a waiting list and, going into despair. What do you have to say to those people? What advice do you have?
Don't give up. What happens is when people get into these situations, they stop. They get frustrated. Well, there it is again. I can't do anything. Don't stop. The squeaky door gets the oil, so to speak. You're just going to
When
keep
you're going through hell, keep going.
keep going. Do not give up. You. If I could say one thing that I think might make some difference, yeah, is to all the viewers and your listeners, is you are worth this. Never get to the point that you believe you're not worth the help and the attention it takes. You are absolutely worth it. You go get it. That's all. And you'll find that if you keep on knocking on the door, they are going to answer. If you stop, the next person's knocking. Count on that.
So once you start engaging in this, is there a learning process that you can then become more self-empowered and catch things in the bud more easily?
Absolutely. The more knowledge you have, the more experience you have working with those parts of yourself, you see things faster. And either you'll know where to go, or you'll know where to go for help, or you'll at least say, "I've done this before. I all I have to do is follow this particular path. I may not know everything, but I have people that I counseled 35, 40 years ago, and they'll come in once a year, twice. It's time for my little maintenance, and they'll come in or they'll call me up, and they're smart enough to realize that either it's starting to go off, or I don't know whether it is or not, but I'm going to go and I'm going to figure it out.
Well,
I'm taking
Faust,
my car into the shop. I don't know if there's anything wrong.
unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Always. Our guest this hour has been Faust Ruggiero, the author of Fix Yourself Handbook, a published research author, clinical trainer, and therapist. To find out more about Faust and all he has to offer, visit his website, faustruggiero.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyeka. For more information or to enjoy our past archives, visit www.missionevolution.org. Be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our evolving world.